Yeah, I think it's a real important point to make because I've had 12 years of the experience of working with, some of the best in the business, and the real secret to success is letting them do what they know very well. And I have a saying is you balance the stereo to the shot as opposed to balancing the shot to the stereo. And that's a very important thing to realize because when you have somebody who's driving a creative process, you've got to be very careful how much you influence that. I'm probably the quietest stereographer in the business because I enjoy the fact that what they're bringing to the table is the foundation of the whole presentation, the whole basis of the entertainment. And all I'm there is to enhance that look by complementing it with some of the technology that we bring to the table. And when you see the end result, it's quite impressive, and it breaks through all of those barriers because some of the barriers are created by the fact that you've got somebody who doesn't know the entertainment part of the equation. They know the technology part, they know the dimension part, and they try and kind of induce that on the whole situation so that almost the director doesn't know what to do. And I've seen it work, whether it's a Michael Bay production, whether it's a Martin Scorsese, it's an NBA production. And I just walked away from the Masters where we had a really talented golf director, and everybody was concerned with this 3D experience, which was zero. And so the whole talk going in was, oh my gosh, he's never done 3D before. It's the Masters, it's the Super Bowl of sports. And I couldn't be more impressed with the entertainment value of the 3D show that we did because he concentrated on the whole golf sport. He concentrated on, the camera angles, the composition, telling the story. And what I did was basically make sure that the cameras from a stereo capacity complemented that. And in the end, the assembly of those two takes us out of the dimension world, which is one of my pet peeves is, we sit there and we all get so impressed with the dimension that we lose sight that it needs to be 3D entertainment. It's not 3D dimension. We're beyond that. That's, it's now in the entertainment world. And so, for me, from a broadcaster standpoint, I know you're going to hear a lot of people out there tell you that, no, you can't do this, or you got to do it this way, or that. I've seen time and time again that the foundation of what you're currently doing, what you're doing for shows and productions, is going to translate perfectly to 3D with one small caveat. That when you really get into our world and you start seeing what the opportunities are, you'll take it even further. And that's kind of the next wave that we'll see is that when we're really starting to see opportunities that present themselves in our world that don't necessarily present themselves in the 2D world.
I think a good metaphor for it is the transition to color. I don't think we could imagine somebody, hanging out a shingle as a good color director or a good color camera operator. The concept it just doesn't work. Initially there was color programming and color channels. Now there's 3D programming and 3D channels. Eventually that'll go away, and 3D will just be ubiquitous. It'll be across all the platforms. But I think that these job descriptions, when people are defining their job as I'm a 3D director, I'm a 3D operator, then they've sort of they've narrowcast themselves in a way that I think doesn't make sense. So I think it's up to the technology and services providers, which is our camp, to enable people who are very experienced at what they do. And I think a good example of this is some of the problems that you were having when you were dealing with the sports shoots, as people were dipping their toe in the water, whether it was ESPN or so on, of how to do this. Some of the early sports shoots, of course, they would set up a 3D team over here and a 2D team here. The 2D team had 20 cameras, and they had 15, 20 years of experience. And the 3D team were 3D specialized people who didn't necessarily know how to shoot that sport. They've got dog camera positions that were kind of the leftovers, the table scraps. And they were sort of treated as a redheaded stepchild. And then everybody cried that it was costing way too much because there were two entire crews. And so it didn't work from a business model standpoint, and it didn't produce, it was stunning, of course, because 3D is stunning and mesmerizing, but it wasn't as good as it could have been. And so as we've worked in this world and gained experience and built muscle actually doing these types of broadcasts and Vince can speak to this in more detail, it's become really apparent that the business model doesn't work if you think of it as I'm going to have a 3D production team and a 3D production truck and my same old 2D guys. You have to go beyond that to there's going to be one production, and it's going to be a 3D, 2D production. And the 3D will be overlaid on the 2D in a way that makes sense. And ultimately, within the next couple of years, probably everything will be a 3D camera, and the 2D will be extracted from that. But it's not as simple as just shooting everything with a 3D camera and extracting the 2D feed. And I think Vince was certainly absolutely the technology leader in this with the shadow camera technology, which he can give you more information on.
Yeah, I